Hot hatches are the fun and engaging version of otherwise bland offerings. Think Focus STs, Golf GTIs, and of course the Honda Civic Type R. The thing is though that over the years, hot hatches have become heavier, larger, and of course more expensive. So the question is, are they still those frugal machines that pack a big punch and can make you smile from ear to ear, or have they just gotten a little bit too big and too expensive for their own good? And to find out, today we have a 2023 Honda Civic Type R, an offering that now tips the scales in at just shy of 80,000 Aussie dollars. Now it's a horrible cliche to say that the interior or cabin of a car is a nice place to be, except that's exactly what it is in the case of the Civic Type R. Once you lower yourselves into these stunning seats, which by the way, if you're a little bit colour sensitive, you may want to wear sunnies when you drop into this cabin because these seats are very, very bright. But once you do drop into them, you have this fantastic Alcantara steering wheel in front of you, which, as it stands, because this is a brand new car, it feels really, really nice in your hands. I get a feeling that maybe after a few years, if you're, say, the fourth or fifth buyer, I don't know how nice that's going to feel, and I wonder if it's going to have the previous owner's juices still wrapped in it, which is a little bit yuck to think about. But right now, this is absolutely stunning to hold and to use. Beyond that, we have this crystal clear LCD display, which depending on how you want your display set up, there's a plethora of customization options. Also, depending on what drive mode you're in, will change how it looks. It's all very easy to use and looks really good. Moving on from there, we have this center screen, which is the same in the base model Civic. Very crisp, very clear, a little bit laggy, if I'm honest, switching between Apple CarPlay and the other infotainment available, but nothing too bad. And we do have this Logic R mode, which is kind of fun to play with. Has a whole bunch of different telemetry for you, which if you're someone who takes your Civic to the track, might actually be useful. Whereas for me, I was just trying to move the little ball and the G meter as much as I could because, you know, I'm a child. Moving on from there, we have this fantastic gear knob. Honestly, one of the favorite parts of the car for me. I love the little clink it gives if you touch it with your wedding ring, for example. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful shifter. We'll get on to the shifter feel on our drive. Apart from that, everything that you see is well equipped. So it's either soft touch material, quality feeling metals or plastics. Everything is just really nicely laid out. So whatever doesn't need to be in here isn't, but everything that is here is really well equipped, which I really, really like. My one gripe with the interior, I will say, and maybe this is more of a gripe with an iPhone 14, is we have a charging pad here, just in front of the gear stick, which I find that even just normal driving, not driving, spiritedly, my phone must move around a little bit too much. So I start charging it, and then I look down and all of a sudden it's not charging. And you have to be really pinpoint accurate with where you put your phone. Again, I know the iPhone 14, its camera extends a little bit. So, maybe it's not the car's fault whatsoever, but it's just something that I've found rather annoying. Visibility is perfect. You know where all four corners of the car are at all times, and it's very easy to see around you. That rear wing is so tall that it actually matches the roofline in the rear view mirror for me, so it doesn't get in the way at all. The wing mirrors are very nice as well. It has blind spot monitoring, that sort of thing as well, which you'd expect from a 2023 car. But what it means is you know exactly where the Type R is at all times. Now, behind us, we have two seats. So it's not a traditional five-seater, it's only a four-seater. But what that means is that the rear occupants actually get a little bit of bolstering in their seats, which is very comfortable. I say that as a rather short guy myself. I think if you're over 6 foot, that may potentially be a little bit cramped with that sloping roofline. But if you've got children or anything like that, they'll be very comfortable. Speaking of children, we also have some ISOFIX points back there as well. So again, this really owing to the fact that the Type R can be a daily driver or a family car. Tech-wise, we have the infotainment, Apple CarPlay wireless, which is good. We've got some USB charging ports. It's all the sort of stuff that you'd expect to see in a car in 2023. So there's nothing that really stands out, but there's also nothing that's missing. Now, I really want to talk about these seats because I honestly feel that they are so close to absolute perfection. So if they had heating and maybe ventilation, I think then they would just be the best seats in the entire world. But I love the design. I love the color of red that they've chosen. I also love the fact that we have the little embossing on the headrest and also on the backside of the seats. And I love how much they really hug you in Although, to be honest with you, and I'm not exactly a small person, it's making me realise that I probably should put down the fork a little bit because they are quite snug. I don't think I'd want to be too much bigger than I am, but of course, you know, real men have curves and so do real roads. So I think I've done enough talking. It's time to start driving. So, going out on the road in the Type R, and we're going to start off with a lovely little 0 to 100 sprint. Bit of wheel spin there. Bit more wheel spin. And there we go. So I think I can sum up the drive in the Type R in one single word, which is sublime. In all honesty, this car is so good. So, you know, I had high expectations for the Type R, but just the way it makes you feel when you're driving is so sensational, and it is hot hatchery at its best. And I don't think hot hatchery is a real word, but it should be, because that's exactly what this car excels in. It's got plenty of straight line pace. It has a little bit too much power, especially for its tyres, so it can easily go searching for grip. But that's all part of the theatre. You know, you come round out of a hairpin corner, you plant it, and it just lights up, and it's so much fun to watch the car kind of wiggle around, grab the road, pull itself forward. If you can manage to behave yourself and be a little bit more adult about it all, it's a very nice drive. You know, it's not taxing at all. The suspension, whilst firm, is really compliant. So the roads that I've been driving today, again, they're not the best, but they're certainly not the worst. However, I've found that this Civic Type R, has just been able to really calmly go over the undulations and some of the more questionable parts of the road, but it still feels planted. You know, it does feel sporty. You put it into R mode and that feeling just increases. So again, the car hunkers down, it grabs the road more, but it also doesn't smash your teeth out of your skull, so you don't feel like it's overbearing. Power delivery is extremely linear. You know, we do have that turbocharged 2-litre motor up front, and there are some minor tweaks to this generation's motor over the previous gen, but all that I can really feel from the driver's seat is a very nice linear power band, which I kind of would have liked a little bit more theatre. I'd like a bit of turbo shove, if I'm honest, especially because we don't get the VTEC crossover anymore. So, you know, when I drove Steve's 2007 Civic Type R, the VTEC crossover was a massive part of the occasion. So as soon as you got up into VTEC, you could hear the engine get on cam and you felt that little kick of power, and it was quite fun. Obviously, in this motor, we don't get that, but you also don't really get a big thump of torque in the back from the turbo either. So yes, it's capable, it's just not theatrical. For me, one of the highlights of the Type R is the steering. It's so beautifully weighted. When you put it into R mode, it has real heaviness behind it and substance behind it, which makes using it such a joy. You know, there's not a lot of cars that are coming out brand new from factory that have steering that really feel like this or give you feedback like this. So this is something that I think Honda has done an exceptional job on. And of course, my favorite part of the car is this gearbox. You know, you end up rowing through it just for no reason whatsoever. And it does have auto rev matching, which is quite handy if you're someone who's not versed in heel and toe shifting, or you just can't really be bothered on that particular day. You can go into the menus, of course, and turn it off, but when it works this well, why would you? So as an example, I'm now pottering along in 5th gear, and if I want to bring myself down to 4th, 3rd, then 2nd, it's just like this. And then we'll go for 2nd. Now, of course, it's great being able to go quick in a straight line, but you also need to be able to pull the car up. And it's been awesome using these Brembos on the 2023 Civic Type R. They've got great initial bite, they're progressive, they're not overbearing or over servoed, but when you really do want to wash off speed quickly, they do a fantastic job. A small gripe that I have is the amount of road noise that comes through to the cabin. So we're rolling on 19-inch wheels with quite thin 30 profile rubber. And these are Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, so they're nice and grippy, but they are quite noisy, especially on the roads that we're driving today that are a little bit more coarser. You know, there's a lot of stuff coming, or a lot of sound coming through to the cabin, I should say. It's obviously a bit of a trade-off when it comes to having grip and performance, but it's something that you might just want to consider. Is it possible putting a set of 18s and getting a bit of a thicker sidewall to try and quieten it down? As we're driving along, we have our infotainment, which I don't have on right now, but it's all very easy to use, very intuitive. The touchscreen remains when you're driving along, which is quite handy. So it's not like, say, the Mazda MX-5 that it turns off the touchscreen when you're driving, which means that, you know, you don't really have to think about where anything is. You learn the button placements quite quickly. Now, when I reviewed the Toyota Supra, I got a little bit of flack for my comments saying that the manual gearbox really didn't add to the experience. And what I was trying to say is that that particular manual gearbox was just rubbish, if I'm honest. Whereas this one in the Civic Type R is an absolute peach. Now, I tend to think that the one in the MX-5 is probably one of the best shifters around, especially in the affordable car segment. But I have to say that the one in this is just so good. It's so much fun rowing through the gears. It's got this real sharp, snick little action, not overly long, but not, you know, stupidly short either. Has a lot of weight to it, which is nice because you feel like you're really clunking it into the gate. And of course, it has that beautiful shifter, which just feels fantastic in your hand. Does feel quite cold at the moment. So I should say that it is winter here in Australia. I jumped in this car when it was about 4 degrees, and it was quite chilly to start off with. I imagine that when it comes to summertime, it's going to be the opposite, and you're going to be trying to touch it with little fingers or perhaps put a sock on it. I'm not too sure what people do in this instance, but you know, once you've calmed the temperature down for your poor little hands, it's just fantastic to use. So now let's go to the 3 things that I love and the 3 things that I hate. We'll start with the positives first. For me, first is suspension. I love the way this car feels on the road. It's so compliant yet so capable, and it really does feel like it is glued to the road. So even when you're throwing it through corners, nothing seems to upset it. But then also, you never really feel like your teeth are being rattled out of your head. So again, Honda have just nailed the suspension on this car, especially when it comes to Australian B roads. Number 2, the gearbox. Can't say enough good things about it. It's an absolute pleasure to use. The auto rev matching does make it a little more accessible to those out there that maybe want to learn how to heel and toe, or potentially just can't be bothered with it but enjoy a nice downshift. It is an absolute peach. And third is the seats. As I said earlier, they are just about perfection. The way they hold you in, their colour, their shape, everything about them is perfect. Now, things that I don't like. First is the amount of NVH that comes through to the cabin. Now, again, I understand this is the performance model, so you do need to make some concessions, but on a longer road trip, it just gets a little bit overbearing, especially on the Australian roads that we have out in the country, like the one I'm on right now. I'm sure you're picking up there's a lot of noise that's coming through to the cabin, and that can get a little bit tiresome. And on the same theme of noise, it's the lack of it from the car. So, you know, it's just extremely muted, and I know that this has to appeal to a wide audience, so I understand why it's not massively loud, but there's just no real tone to it, even in R mode. And thirdly, and this shows you how far I had to go looking to find fault with the Type R, is the rather strange scale that they've used for the speedo. So a lot of the roads around me are 50 or 60 Ks, and then once I get out somewhere like here, it's 100 Ks. But the scale they've used is in 40s, which is a little bit strange, and I guess it's a little bit braggy to show that it can apparently do 320 kilometers an hour, which I doubt that it can. But it just means that the analog part of the speedo just doesn't really mean too much for most driving. Granted, you've got the digital speedo in front of you, so it's not that much of an issue, but as I said to you, I had to really go looking for something that would fill the third spot of things I don't like about the Type R. So in all honesty, I've loved my time with the Type R, and if I didn't love my MX-5 so much, if I somehow had $77,000 laying around for me to spend, and I wasn't fearful that my wife would just kill me instantly, I'd happily give this back and run away to Honda and buy one today. I mean, it is just such a sensational car. Yes, I think it costs a bit too much, but it does give you that hot hatch feeling, and it is so capable on a country road. I can only imagine what it must be like on track. It can also just drive along in heavy traffic, well behaved, nice and calmly. It's not a chore. The suspension is quite comfortable, so you could use this every single day, drive it to the track, fang it around, and drive home in relative comfort. You've got room for your kids, you've got room for your stuff in the back. I mean, I'm genuinely amazed. You know, this isn't me trying to ham it up for the camera or anything like that. You know, considering how bored I was with the base model Civic, I was a little bit apprehensive coming into this model, but it has just blown me away. Now, one thing I did forget to talk about earlier is how I feel about the exterior of the Type R. So I feel like Honda do this weird thing where they either go balls to the wall, make it look as sporty as possible, almost Transformer spec, or they come full conservative. And I think with the previous generation, people thought they went a little bit too far with the fancy wings and ducts and all that sort of stuff. Personally, I quite liked it. Whereas with this model, I think they've gone quite conservative, but in a way that still has a couple of subtle nods and cues to let you know that this is the sporty one. Now, unfortunately, today I've been given a crystal black car, which, you know, let's face it, all Type Rs should be championship white, right? The one thing that this car does well, being in black, is really make that rear spoiler look like it's part of the car. I'm not sure about you guys, but I tend to feel that, especially championship white cars, it almost looks like as they were going out of the factory, someone's quickly run into the parts bin and just thrown a little plastic spoiler on the back. Whereas because it's the exact same hue as the rest of the body in the black version, it actually ties in really nicely. Aside from that though, I think the front looks stunning. It's nice and aggressive. The rear sloping profile, which looks quite good, although it does show just how large the Type R has gotten over the years. And then from the rear, we have the now trademark 3 exhaust tip at the back, which looks quite cool. It's quite quirky. And of course, we have these black 19-inch wheels, and sitting behind that, some beautifully bright red Brembo brake calipers. So overall, I think the exterior design, it's good. I think it's a little conservative, but at the end of the day, I think they've struck a very good balance. So what do you think about the 2023 Civic Type R? Get involved in the comments down below and let me know. As always, a massive thank you to Exhaust Notes Australia for making this possible, and a huge thank you to you guys for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.